There's a moment in every person's life when everything falls apart. When the world tells you you're not enough. When your bank account screams failure. When everyone you trusted walks away. And in that moment, you have two choices. You can believe what the world says about you, or you can decide to rewrite your story. This is about someone who chose the second path. And if you're watching this right now, feeling like you're at rock bottom, this story isn't just about him. It's about you. It's about what happens when you refuse to stay down. He was 23 years old, sitting on the floor of an empty apartment with $17 to his name. No furniture, no food in the fridge, no degree on the wall to prove he was worthy of anything. 3 years earlier, he dropped out of college because he couldn't afford tuition and couldn't see the point anymore. His parents had stopped speaking to him. His girlfriend had left, saying she couldn't be with someone without ambition. Friends who used to call him lucky now called him a quitter. And the rejection emails kept coming, one after another, from every job he applied to. Too inexperienced, not qualified, not a cultural fit. The words changed, but the message was always the same. You're not good enough. But here's what nobody saw. Here's what they couldn't see when they looked at him and saw failure. Inside that broke, rejected kid was a fire that wouldn't go out. Every rejection added fuel. Every closed door made him more determined to build his own. He didn't have a plan. He didn't have connections or a trust fund or a safety net. What he had was something more powerful. He had the kind of hunger that only comes from having nothing left to lose. And late at night, when the shame and doubt tried to drown him, he made himself a promise. Not someday, not when things get easier. Now, he would start now with what he had, even if what he had was almost nothing. The beginning was brutal. He taught himself skills that people paid thousands to learn in universities, watching free videos until 3 in the morning, taking notes on the back of junk mail because he couldn't afford notebooks. He offered his services for free just to build a portfolio, just to prove he could do what he said he could do. People took advantage of him. They'd promise to pay later and then ghost him. They'd use his work and give him no credit. And every time it happened, something inside him wanted to quit, to prove everyone right, to accept that maybe he really wasn't meant for success. But then he'd remember where he came from, and he'd realize he'd already survived the worst. Everything else was just noise. Slowly, impossibly, things started to shift. Not because the universe suddenly decided to be kind, but because he'd changed the only thing he had control over, himself. He stopped waiting for permission, stopped hoping someone would discover him. He became relentless about improving, obsessive about delivering value, fearless about reaching out to people who seemed unreachable. When one approach didn't work, he tried another. When that didn't work, he tried 10 more. He treated rejection like data, not destiny. Each no brought him closer to a yes. Each failure taught him what success required. And the habits he built in those dark months, the discipline forged when nobody was watching, became the foundation of everything that came after. Then came the breakthrough. Not a lottery win, not a viral moment. Just a single client who took a chance on him, saw his potential, and told someone else. That referral led to another, then another. The kid who couldn't get hired started getting offers he had to turn down. The dropout who lived on $17 started making more in a month than his former classmates made in a year. Within 3 years of hitting rock bottom, he built something that couldn't be ignored. An agency, a brand, a reputation for being the person who delivered when others made excuses. And the industry that had rejected him was now studying his methods, trying to figure out how someone with no credentials had become someone they couldn't overlook. But here's what matters more than the money or the success. Here's the part that changes everything if you really hear it. He didn't become a different person. He became more of who he always was underneath the fear and doubt. The qualities that brought him success weren't qualities he developed after he made it. They were qualities he chose when he had nothing. The work ethic, the resilience, the refusal to make excuses, the willingness to look stupid while he learned. Those things didn't come from confidence. They came from desperation transformed into determination. And that's the truth about success that nobody wants to tell you. It doesn't require you to be special. It requires you to be stubborn about becoming better than you were yesterday. So what can we learn from this? What does his story teach us that we can actually use in our own lives right now, today, regardless of where we're starting from? The first lesson is this: your current situation is not your final destination. Every successful person you admire was once where you are now, feeling inadequate, scared, uncertain. The difference between those who make it and those who don't isn't talent or luck or who they know. It's the decision to keep moving when every logical reason says to stop. It's the understanding that rock bottom isn't where you die. It's where you build your foundation. The second lesson is about the power of free work and learning. When he couldn't get hired, he didn't sit around complaining about how unfair the system was. He made himself undeniable. He offered value before asking for anything in return. He invested in himself when nobody else would. And here's what's beautiful about that approach. You don't need anyone's permission. You don't need a degree or credentials or approval. You need skills and the willingness to prove you have them. In today's world, you can learn almost anything for free if you're hungry enough. The question isn't whether the resources exist. The question is whether you're willing to do the work when nobody is watching, when nobody cares, when there's no guarantee it'll pay off. The third lesson is about rejection and failure. He could have let those rejection emails define him. He could have internalized the message that he wasn't good enough. Instead, he used them as motivation. He kept a folder of every no he ever received, and years later, when he'd made it, he'd look back at them and feel grateful. Because those rejections forced him to bet on himself. They pushed him to create his own path instead of waiting for someone to hand him one. And that's the paradox of success. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is the best thing that could have happened, because it forces you to discover strength you didn't know you had. The fourth lesson is about consistency over intensity. He didn't transform his life in a day, or a week, or even a month. It took years of unglamorous work, showing up when he didn't feel like it, pushing forward when progress felt invisible, building habits that compounded over time. We live in a world that celebrates overnight success stories, but those stories are myths. Real transformation happens in the quiet moments when you choose growth over comfort, discipline over distraction, action over anxiety. It's not about making one big heroic leap. It's about taking small steps consistently until you've walked 1,000 miles. The fifth lesson, and maybe the most important one, is this: you don't need to have it all figured out to start. He didn't have a master plan. He didn't know exactly how things would work out. He just knew he had to do something, anything, to move forward. And that willingness to begin before you're ready, to learn as you go, to embrace uncertainty instead of waiting for certainty, that's what separates people who talk about their dreams from people who live them. Clarity comes from action, not contemplation. You discover your path by walking it, not by standing at the starting line waiting for a map. So here's my challenge to you. Stop waiting. Stop making excuses. Stop believing the story that you're not ready or qualified or talented enough. The person in this story wasn't special. He was desperate and determined. And if you're watching this, you have something he didn't have when he started. You have his example. You have proof that it's possible. You have the knowledge that someone else stood where you're standing and made it to the other side. What's your rock bottom teaching you? What fire is burning inside you that you've been too afraid to feed? What would you do differently if you knew that 3 years from now, you could look back at this moment as the turning point? Take one action today, not tomorrow, not when you feel more confident or have more time or figure everything out. Today, send that message, start that project, learn that skill, make that sacrifice. Do the thing that scares you because it matters, and then do it again tomorrow, and the day after that, because success isn't about the big moments. It's about the small choices you make when nobody is watching, when there's no applause, when the only thing pushing you forward is the decision to refuse to stay where you are. You are not defined by your past failures or your current circumstances. You are defined by what you do next. And the beautiful, terrifying truth is that your next chapter starts the moment you decide it does. So decide, right now. Decide that you're done being the person who wishes things were different. Decide to become the person who makes things different. Your story isn't over. This is just the part where everything changes. This is where you begin.